Okay, so welcome everybody out in the internets. This is our third podcast, I think, here at CrossFit Glen Burnie. So big shout out to Bob for getting everything set up for us to talk about a couple of things on the weekend. So awesome for that. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to do a member spotlight with Noel.
Hello.
Welcome, Noel. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
Good. So what we'd like to talk about is just we'll start off here with a couple of first questions. We'll just have you introduce yourself first, and then we'll go with these questions. So,
Okay.
Who are you?
I'm Noel Diaz.
Hello, Noel.
Hi. What else do you want me to say?
Where are you from, Noel?
Oh, I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm stationed here on Fort Meade, Maryland. Originally from northern New Jersey.
Northern New Jersey.
Yep.
How long have you been here?
For about 4 or 5 years. I went from the schoolhouse here for photography and videography, and then straight to the 55th Signal Company Combat Camera.
Cool.
So been here for a little bit.
Nice.
How long have you been CrossFitting for?
For about a year. Come next month, I believe. Just a year. Yeah.
What is it that attracted you to CrossFit?
So I wanted to do something. I wanted to challenge myself mainly, step up my fitness game. I used to be in the gym just like doing, cardio or squats, and I'm in the Army as well, so, PT every morning, but I wanted to challenge myself a little bit more. So I figured definitely joining CrossFit would do that job.
What's been the biggest surprise, biggest challenge that you found since you've started?
I would have to say getting into the Olympic weightlifting. That has been a challenge, and I would have to say toes to bar. That's been a challenge for me, but definitely the Olympic weightlifting.
When you came to CrossFit Glen Burnie, did you have any specific goals or things that you had in mind, or you just were just trying to generally be better and fitter?
Probably just be better, just learn all the movements of CrossFit and slowly get better at each and every movement. But definitely just to take on a challenge was the main focus and the main goal.
Do you remember what your first CrossFit workout was?
Oh, that's a great question.
I can't remember what it was. I'm not too sure. I think it did involve deadlifts, but I'm not sure what the workout was.
Tony, do you remember your first CrossFit workout?
Oh, man. I believe my first CrossFit workout in a CrossFit gym was Murph.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was Murph.
Bob, what was yours?
Let's see. I think mine was going to be Fran. It was at the CrossFit Level 1, which was the first time that I was in a CrossFit gym. Prior to that, I was in Gold's Gym. Fell in love with CrossFit and decided I had to get CrossFit certification. So signed up right away, drove up to Philly, and Fran was the workout they were doing at that point in time. So it was they had a 10-minute time cap, and I got time capped.
Did you do Fran yesterday?
And we did do Fran yesterday, yes.
And how'd it go?
Much better.
Okay, good.
Noel, one of the big questions I always have for people is why have you stuck with CrossFit?
I would have to say I stuck with CrossFit because it's a lot of moving around and a lot of hands-on things. I cheered for 11 years of my life, so yeah, so a lot of things like lifting. It just reminds me of my position was a base pretty much my entire cheerleading career, but it just reminds me a lot of just hands-on, that cheerleading movements, even some of the gymnastics portions. It's just a lot. I just like it. It's very, very, very I don't know how to explain it. Very functional. I don't know. I just love it. So I stuck with it.
Does it give you the same feeling as when you're about to walk back out on the mat for cheer?
Yes.
When you're about to start a workout?
Does. Yeah, it does. It's the performance of it all and just pushing through. It really does. So.
Now, Noel, you said just almost a year now, right?
Yes.
So are you, for those coaches, I'm sure that have seen you've made some pretty vast improvements since just kind of sticking with the program. Do you feel that you're going to kind of step up a little bit and maybe decide to maybe do some competitions? Or you just, I'm okay with every day coming in here, being consistent, just kind of sticking with the program, and it's gonna make me better? Or,
I would definitely say I'm definitely going to start getting into competitions. I do have one March 7th with Andrea and Ashley.
Oh, really?
Yes, we're doing the scaled version for the Granite Games, the
Congratulations.
throwdowns.
Nice.
Yep. So
Nice.
it'll be
Awesome.
fun. First time, so I'm excited for that.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a great time. And Granite Games are always a great time. It gives you, especially, I think, is it going to be over at CrossFit Execution, I think?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. You're going to see a lot of great competition for sure. I think you guys are going to do well. That's good.
Excited.
That's really, really cool. So we appreciate you being our first member for this first podcast. That's pretty cool. So now I want to kind of jump into a couple other topics that I thought would be interesting to talk about. So do you see yourself still doing, and this is for everybody here.
Oh yeah.
Do any of us see ourselves being in CrossFit when we're 60?
Yeah, I got to jump in on this one. I got 7 more years, so I'm nearly there. I'm halfway.
That's what I'm talking about, Bob.
I definitely do. I've had a really unique experience. About a year and a half ago, I actually convinced my mom to walk into a CrossFit gym. And she's in her 70s, and so I've gotten to see it firsthand how much, CrossFit really is infinitely scalable, and seeing how it's affected her functional movement. And I feel more comfortable, with her living out by herself and everything, because I know, she falls, she's going to be able to get back up. So just seeing firsthand, how you can CrossFit as a master's athlete, especially up in an older age, that I definitely intend on sticking with it.
Nice. Yeah, I could see myself being 60 and still here, as long as my, body is allowing me to be here. But that's the plan. Keep going until I can't. So
keep going until you can. That should be on a T-shirt, I think. Keep going until I can. That's great.
And then note my time.
Yeah, I'm inspired every time I see the games, all the older athletes and the things that they're doing. So that gives me not hope, but that gives me a mark on the wall to say, yeah, I totally can still do it. And if nothing else, infinitely scalable, and maybe even more so being able to help, being in a community like CrossFit typically generates, as an older athlete, being able to help younger athletes really understand, maybe that sets an example. When I see people like Bob, you look younger than you are.
Absolutely.
So please don't take no offense to that. But when I see older folks that are doing CrossFit, I always man, dude, they're in here working just as much as I'm working. So that's very exciting to see. So
I know you want to say something. I want to jump in, but Rachel, you go ahead. I want to jump in next though.
No, I was just going to say, I think it goes back to the emphasis of technique. So long as we keep doing things right now, and making sure that our technique is, the way it should be, and we're watching our form and not just going out and just, ripping a barbell off the ground, that's going to be a really big contributing factor in how long we're able to do this.
Yeah, definitely. We've had the fortunate experience of having one of our members go off to the CrossFit Games as a master's athlete. So that's definitely, that athletic pursuit. But day in, day out, we have to recognize the health benefit that we're providing as well. And with Greg Glassman and, the Lifeboat here, we've got providing health and fitness for folks on that longevity. And that longevity, Rachel, I love that. A little bit of time working on those fundamentals, those small things add up to big things. And when we look at, folks who are starting, perhaps they have not only, maybe a weight loss goal, but more importantly, building muscle mass.
Yeah.
I was working with someone the other day, they're in their mid 40s, and we were looking out ahead. They setting goals of adding muscle. When you add muscle now in your 40s, you've got 20 years to build muscle so that you can remain functional when you're 60. So if you think about it in that long term, you are putting muscle in the bank. And it doesn't just end there as well. We know that bone density with our plyometrics, weight-bearing exercises, and things like that is something you put in the bank and you take with you into later life. That is a bigger factor when we have teens and youth participating in weight-bearing exercises as well as plyometrics, box jumps, things like that. That they take with them, and that is theirs to keep going forward. So just think about, putting a little bit in the bank over a long time. That interest adds up and keeps you from, chronic diseases like osteopenia and stuff like that. So, big picture, it's not just, getting to the games, which is incredible in and of itself, but each and every individual here is moving that needle a little bit further every day.
That's
fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even think about that. And that's the other thing too, is I don't know of, look, I say it's training regimen, but I don't know any other training regimen or personal trainer that would take a look at a 60-year-old and say those types of things, explore those types of conversations, and then enable them that way. It always seems like, oh, my goal is just to move around, rather than actually put into perspective of what that means long term. Yeah, that's a great comment, Bob. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so the next question I'd like to ask everybody here is, or maybe not really, I don't know how to frame this, but what do we think is the difference between competing every day and training every day? And is there a difference, or do we find a difference? Rachel?
So this one's going to come with a personal anecdote. So yes, to start off, I think there's definitely a difference between training every day and competing every day. I'm going to jump into a little bit of Ben Bergeron here. There's a difference between competing against yourself and then competing against your competition. So when I come in the gym every day, I want to train and get better so that I can compete against myself and better myself. Whereas when I think of competing, I think of, going to a competition, or I've had to reframe my thoughts to this, to going to a competition for those rare times when, okay, we're going full send, 100%, as hard as I can, whether that's, 30-minute workout, I don't mean strategizing, but pushing really hard at the end, or a 3-minute workout like Fran yesterday where it is just 100% intensity from the get-go. But then in the gym every day, it's competing against myself, training where it's just, okay, how am I going to get better? Which means, for something it might be just 80% effort, but making myself better, focusing on a movement. I know we touched on this a little bit last week, Tony, when you were talking about one of your workouts. So I definitely think there's a difference. I tend to look at competing, like I said, more as you're on a competition floor. It is go time. You've tapered up to it. Your meals, your diet's on point, and this is your main effort. Whereas training is, okay, maybe I just need to be at 80% or 70%, and
Noel, you've been here at this gym for almost a year now. Does that thought come across your mind every day, or are you just like, you know what, I'm just going to send it every workout I'm in here?
I would say the thought comes across my mind. I haven't gotten into many competitions yet, but coming into this gym, I definitely challenge myself. And if it's like a workout that's a repeat, I try to compete with the results I had last time. But it definitely, I try to push myself farther and farther. But when it comes to I challenge myself. I definitely try to compete against myself, but if I can't do something, I just, do what I can do and try my best.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Bob, what about you, sir?
Yeah, well, Dave Castro had an interesting interview recently with Julie Fouché, and he talked about the CrossFit athletes. If you say you happen to have a bad, that workout was bad for me, or that test was bad for me, then you really don't belong at the CrossFit Games. You weren't prepared. So being prepared for competition means that you're basically at your, you're ready for anything. So you're, bring it on. I'm ready to go. Now, bringing us to the level of the health and the fitness track that we have as well, we're going to be viewing competition a little bit differently. There's the first aspect of having that motivation of having your friend or classmate next to you, working hard, putting every bit of hard work in to get as much as they can out of it. And so that by itself is a little bit of competition that is a good competition that drives us to be a little more motivated and to push a little bit harder every day that we come in. The second aspect of it is when you think of competition, who are you racing against? And when we're looking at the race against chronic disease or about health and fitness, who do you tag as that enemy? Is it body fat? Is it the sitting on the sofa and not actually being active, being sedentary and stuff like that? So who are you in a race against? And if you can frame that as your enemy, your competition every day is to be prepared, be your best, and to win first place.
I think a lot of that comes with self-awareness too, and the more time that you spend in the gym, the more you learn about each other. Bob's really great about approaching this from the health and fitness long-term goal, and I know I'm tainted towards approaching it with a competitiveness athlete goal, but or focus, I guess. But it makes me think about some of the elite CrossFit Games athletes when they're like, we cannot train together all the time. Because if we train together all the time, we end up just running each other into the ground because all we're doing is competing with each other. And I mean, I know I found that, with myself too, even in here. It's like, okay, like maybe sometimes I need to go on the other side of the gym so I can't see what other people are doing in this workout, and I can run my own race and not go out and just compete and run myself into the ground. So I think but that's not something that I learned, my first year of CrossFit. That's come from years and years and years of training and becoming a smarter athlete, a smarter person, and also developing more of a long-term goal like Bob talks about, where it's like, okay, yeah, competing is really important to me now, but the health and fitness is the long-term. The longevity of my functional fitness and my ability to do this when I'm 60 is what's really, really important.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no, yesterday was a good one for me. So yesterday everybody in the gym did Fran, part of the training program. For my portion was I did 6 bar muscle-ups, 9 chest-to-bar, 12 pull-ups, then 21 thrusters at 115. Repeat the same gymnastic movement, but then 15 thrusters, then repeat the same gymnastic movement, and then 9. So the way I approached that was like, well, that's a lot of volume of stuff, and it's changing, as far as the movements themselves. And so I looked at that as an opportunity to train and figure out like kind of where I was at. Now, when I compared myself, or at least my results, to other athletes that I'm tracking on the board, I looked at it and said, okay, well, I didn't meet this time, I didn't meet this time, but this is where this particular person is and the way I approached it. So now the next time that workout comes out, now I'll change up the aspect and I'll effectively be able to improve the way in which I train it. But I did not look at it as to, beat the next person up, that that's ahead of me. And you said it earlier. For me, that's really hard because when I first joined, every single day I was like flooring it. I had to win every workout, and that's not sustainable. So it's only been over this last year that I've been able to really figure out what that balance is and been self-aware of the volume of training that we put in every day. If you're putting in a lot of volume, you should be focusing in on that. And it's worked out pretty decently so far for me. I feel like I'm prepared, like Bob had mentioned earlier. I feel like I'm prepared for anything. Yeah. This morning I walked in and I guess I was standing in for one of our members who's practicing for the Granite Games and working through the workouts. And as we were working through those workouts, I said, oh man, I could do all these movements fairly well. Yeah. At a decent enough intensity at the moment, just because we're practicing it, but I'm prepared for all of that. So, but I think if it wasn't for the perspective of competing versus training. Mm-hmm. Now, yesterday is an example. That's a benchmark. You kind of want to see where you're at. So that's probably one of those days, only one day out of probably the week, that you just want to
go for it.
You want to send it, right? And then you step back and, okay, that's where I'm at, and then you continue training. So
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yesterday was actually a really big learning opportunity for me, both in terms of training and competing. The last time I did Fran was back in May of 2019, when I was training really consistently, wasn't really plagued with injuries, and I was really, I set a good time for myself. I was really happy with it. I did all the movements unbroken. And so even walking in the gym yesterday and seeing that it was programmed, there was part of me that was in my head about, I'm not going to be able to do this like I did it last time. Just recognizing that my fitness level just wasn't there. And then I found myself kind of looking at the board and being like, okay, well, if I did it as a heavier one, then I could break it up more, and then it wouldn't be, it's heavier Fran, but then I wouldn't have to do Fran, get a slower time, and then compare myself to what I did in May. Yeah. And then I caught myself and I said, no, this is a benchmark. This is your chance to see where you're really at right now. Yeah. With pain, without pain, what does it feel like with your back? And so went into it and just did regular Fran. But it was a really good learning opportunity where I had to catch myself and be like, no, this is not the mental space you want to be in right now. We're not going to take the easy way out. We're going to take this, use it as a learning opportunity, use it as a moment of growth, and it's going to be better for me in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely something that comes along as far as the mindset piece of CrossFit too, because we often think of muscle, bone, stuff like that and getting more fit. But there's always that mindset as well that we can take and apply to life and things like that.
Well, is it Rich Froning who says that the mental game is the 11th trait of fitness, because there's the 10 traits of fitness in the CrossFit, and Rich Froning says, no, it's what's between the ears. Number 11.
Well, look, if Rich Froning says it, it's got to be true. So I figure. Anyways, all right. So the last question for everybody here, we'll make a fun one here. Last question for everybody. Noel, we'll start with you. Do you have a cheat meal every day?
I would say, okay, here's how it goes in my household. So my husband just recently joined, probably like a month ago. I just got him to join.
Congratulations to that. Awesome.
Yeah.
How'd you get him to join?
Well, when he deployed when I joined, so that's one of the reasons why I joined, to, do something besides be at home and at work and just the gym. So I would tell him about it while he's on deployment, like, you have to join, like, this is really good, it's going to improve, like, your overall fitness. And then took some time once he got back from deployment, and then he was like, okay, I'm ready. So it's just convincing him. But I think long days of work and CrossFit, and sometimes it's stressful, and I would say the cheat meals in the house is eating a bowl of like Lucky Charms after we eat dinner, which is even worse. But if there's no sugary cereals in the house, then we're good. But if it just takes that one time at the food store, like, let's just buy the box, and then that's it.
Yeah.
That's it for us.
If it's in the house.
Yep, if it's in the house.
Have you noticed your meal prepping or your grocery shopping change since you started CrossFit?
It has. I've been trying to eat a lot more vegetables. I know that's one thing. I know my husband really has a goal of eating a lot more vegetables, but mainly a lot more chicken, vegetables. I was never a big steak eater, but we try to incorporate more like steak, and especially having a baby, like 2 years ago, I struggled with getting that iron back from all that meat. Your cravings and your appetite changes, so I was a little lacking on meat, so that's one thing I'm trying to incorporate more, but it is changed. Yeah.
How do you feel like, I know you started CrossFit postpartum, right?
Yes.
How do you feel like your fitness level is postpartum with CrossFit versus where you were before you had a child?
That's a great question.
I would have to say, I'm trying to think when I joined. I joined CrossFit when my daughter was about 6 months, and before I joined CrossFit, I was getting where I was, but at the same time, I was struggling a little bit with cardio. I was getting back to the weight I was at originally, but once I joined CrossFit, I actually lost a lot more weight, and then I would say I just started gaining more muscle. So it's definitely, my fitness is definitely a lot better having joined CrossFit, and then, losing all the weight. I lost even more weight, so I was in a better place than, I was regular without CrossFit postpartum. So, yeah.
Cheat meal for you, Rachel? Every day?
No, not every day. Unless you count a glass of wine at night, which I don't really count as a cheat meal significantly. No, my cheat meals usually come on Saturday or Sunday. I'm a really big believer in like the 80-20. So, you can't eat clean 100% of the time. It's just not going to happen. You'll lose your mind. My cheat meals don't happen every day or during the week because I am a very routine person and I meal prep. And so I literally eat the same thing 5 times a day, 5 days a week, because it's easy and I know what I'm doing and I can meal prep it on Sundays with like no thought to it. But usually it's on a Saturday or a Sunday, I'll have, it just depends. Pizza's been a big one lately. Some type of sweets or chocolate. I'm also lactose intolerant, so that makes my cheat meals a lot harder because that cuts out a lot of like sweets and dairy. So if I'm going to cheat, I usually cheat hard. But no, it's not normally an everyday thing. One or two days. But if I cheat like all day long. A cinnamon roll. That would be my biggest. Like,
cinnamon roll.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Bob's over here laughing at me.
I don't think Bob ever has a cheat meal. He's pretty disciplined.
no cheat meals.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it.
What's your cheat meal?
So well, look, it's really like cheat snacks for me. So I for the last 3 weeks, I've been pretty decent about honing in on meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. So I've been really, really disciplined. And what's really crazy is that the days in which I kind of go off of it, which is for 3 weeks, pretty disciplined, I notice a huge difference the next day in my performance levels as far as when I come into the gym to perform. So, so that actually has been, the thing that's like a motivating factor for me is like, well, wait a second, hold on. Like when I eat these things, I don't have it the next day. Now maybe it's a placebo thing, a mental thing, I don't know, but I can definitely feel in my body. When I had, like, example, I'll give you a great example. So I was doing great all last week, and then Thursday hit, and that's my off day. Those are the days I typically struggle with kind of staying on track. But Thursday night, I was sitting there and watching Lego Masters with my daughter, and all of a sudden, I was like, man, I got this craving for Utz sour cream and onion chips with the ridges. With the ridges, though, because the ridges, they keep the sour cream all up in there, right? So. And I said, you know what? All I'm going to have is one handful.
No,
that's
that
it.
Never
That's
works.
it.
That
That's all I'm going to
never works.
have. Next thing you know, the bag is gone. And so the next morning I get up, right? My regular routine. I was like, oh, man, I just don't. I feel really bogged down is immediate. So
Let me ask you a question about that, though.
yeah.
Do you think, you touched on it being mental or possibly being mental. Did you feel guilt and shame because you crave?
Look, that may be a whole nother podcast because, I think maybe that's what we'll do for our next podcast. But we as a society really tie food to our emotions. We're emotionally tied to a lot of things, right? So food for many of us the smells brings us back to a certain experience we had, or maybe like we were on vacation, we were just enjoying the cultures and the way foods are. So our emotions are constantly tied to food, and so it makes it a huge struggle for many people to really work on the discipline and cut back those things. For me, as far as feeling guilt, sort of, kind of, because the guilt, if I did have any, was really about like, I'm not performing at my maximum output, specifically since I know I can feel my body when I'm disciplined in staying with the tenets of what we just talked about, like, the meat, vegetables, meats, nuts and seeds, so on and so forth. Staying to those tenets, those things, I can feel the difference. I really, really can feel a difference. So, a great question. Well, I think we have extended pretty far with the podcast. I would like to say to Noel, thank you so much for joining us today to be our first member spotlight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for being a part of it. Rachel, thank you again for, as always. I love hearing your voice on this podcast. That's always very nice. You have a great perspective. And Bob, you are the scientist, the mastermind, the builder behind the CFGB. So thank you again for providing this opportunity for us. And a shout out to Noel's little daughter, who's just been so kind, sitting over there just waiting, just waiting. So good. So good. So, and to everybody else on the internet, say thank you very much for joining and listening to our podcast. This is CFGB Podcast out.
Thanks, guys.